Hi, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our social media webinar today. We're going to be answering some of your questions and giving you a look at some social media analytic platforms. I am Kristen Matson, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Jennifer Reynolds. And if I can get my slides to advance, you can see our lovely faces. There we go. So Jennifer and I, if you guys haven't been to one of our social media trainings or attended one of our webinars before, we are communication and marketing specialists. And what we do for our clients on a daily basis is help them with their communication strategy, help them run communication campaigns. So this often includes the use of social media. So for the past few years, Jennifer and I have also been offering social media training sessions. So in particular, we've been training anti-drug coalitions on how to use social media to more effectively educate the public on prevention topics. We've trained health departments, sheriff's departments, and also we've done a lot of training for Insight Human Services. So we're really excited today. I think that we bring a really interesting lens to social media training in the fact that we are certified health education specialists. We understand the challenges that you guys face in your day-to-day job, and we're able to really provide some really great strategies on how to overcome some of those. So today we're going to be talking, as I mentioned, we're going to be responding to some of your questions. We previously, Alex was so great to send out an email requesting sort of, last minute questions or things as that we maybe didn't cover in our in-person training last month that you guys wanted to see. So this was really meant to be more of a TA style webinar where we really could respond directly to your questions and concerns. So we had a few questions that were emailed in. We have slated or put them into these general 4 categories: gaining buy-in for social media from senior management, planning for criticism and negativity, promoting social media channels on and offline, and how to use polls as an engagement strategy. We don't think that that'll take up our full 90 minutes today, so we decided to give you guys a tour of Facebook and Instagram Insights. We will be doing a Q&A at the end if we have any remaining time, but I do encourage you to go ahead and use that question box through GoToWebinar at any time if you have questions. Alex will be sharing those with Jennifer and I, and we will pause at various points to answer those as they come in. I do want to also say that this webinar is being recorded, so if you guys have any need to watch it back, you absolutely can. We will also send out the slides. So if your colleagues weren't able to attend today because it is the last day of school, I hear, in North Carolina, please let them know that this information will still be available after today's live broadcast. So with that, I will go ahead and turn things over to Jennifer so that she can talk through how to get senior management to believe that social media is an important aspect of your communication strategy. So I will go over and turn this to Jennifer now.
All right. Thanks, Kristen, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you are not missing lots of pretzels and ice cream at your kids' end of the year party. I know that is a big deal. So thanks for joining us, and let's jump right in. I'm so thankful that we got this question because I think that it's one that a lot of people especially in the nonprofit world, struggle with, which is we really think social media is valuable. How do we get our managers to buy in and allocate the time and resources that it takes to get this well? So I want to share some strategies that we've seen that have been effective. And the first, really, I crammed them together on this one slide because I think they're very related. So I consider these 3 steps to sort of build your case. And the first is to list your communication needs and goals. Almost every organization or business conducts communication activities. They are an essential part of what we do, but a lot of us are doing those activities regularly and not necessarily thinking about strategically how we use communication. And your goals are going to be very dependent on the organization that you work for. So for many of you, you may be conducting interventions and programs, and one of your key communication goals is to encourage participation in those programs. For others of you, you may need to rely on external fundraising. So getting in those donations or getting people to attend your events is going to be absolutely critical to your sustained practice. Some of you may have websites or educational materials that you have to develop, and one of your key communication goals may be promoting those resources. So whatever those goals are, make sure that you write them down and you get some consensus among your team members so that you can clearly communicate those to your management. The next thing that I really want you to do is to calculate the return on investment, or the ROI, of our current communication activities. So many of us spend so much time doing activities, and we never really take the time to really dig in and see, is it worth the time and effort? So I really want you to think about, do you have an email listserv? Do you have a newsletter? Do you have a blog? How much time do you spend regularly, working on your website? Most organizations, I'd say in the last 5 to 10 years, have probably invested a significant amount of money developing a nice website. Well, it's time to spend some time and really think about, what are those metrics saying? Are people using our website, and what pages of our website are people actually using? And I will say, if you have a third party develop your website and they are not regularly reporting your metrics to you, that's a big problem. You need to make sure that they are providing you with that information, or that they can give you a login for whatever metrics program they're using, because you definitely are owed that information if someone else built your website. You may want to spend some time polling your stakeholders about what communication channels they're using, and then include staff time in your calculations, because that really is a currency that we don't always think about. We often think about how much we spend on printing and advertising and events, but we don't also consider our staff's time and how they could be spending their time differently. Time is very valuable. And then the third on this process is really to look at those communication needs and then the return on investment on those current communication activities, and meet with your team and say, okay, are we meeting our communication goals with what we're doing now? And if we're not, how can we use social media to achieve those goals? And I'll give you an example. I was working with a really great organization called Village Partners International out of Tampa, Florida. And they have this wonderful program where they do work in Haiti. And it's compelling and it's interesting. And quite frankly, it's perfect for social media. But their primary communication goal was to build awareness of their organization to drive donations. And the biggest way they did that was through a newsletter. So when we went in and calculated how much time they were spending to develop that newsletter, Once you talked about getting the content and drafting it and formatting it and getting it reviewed and getting it posted and out to their stakeholders, it was about 80 hours worth of their time. When we really dug in, we found out that about 50 people were regularly opening that newsletter when it was sent via their email, and about 20 of those were board members. So math is not my strong suit, but I can tell you that's not a return on investment that I would make. So we've shifted them to a social media-based strategy where they can be much more nimble, much more cost-effective, and they can expand their reach outside of the people who they interact with on a daily basis. So the next thing that I would do is really talk to my senior executives about the changing landscape of communication. So social media, like it or not, has completely changed the way that we advertise, and it's completely changed the way that we communicate as organizations and businesses. And it can provide a lot of benefits. One of those is cost savings, and I have some slides in a moment to demonstrate that. Web referrals. So Facebook in particular is it is behind Google as the largest referrer of web traffic. So if you are doing a lot of referring people to your website or referring people to news sources, social media is something that you definitely should consider. Targeting and precision. Communication has changed. It used to be that our tactic was that the Super Bowl ad, right? You wanted to do media that would get as many eyeballs as you possibly could so that you had a small chance that the right person would see your ad or see your content. And we don't have to work that way anymore. With these digital tools, we really can drill down to where we're talking to the exact people that we want. And the most precise way to do that is through social media. Building trust over time. Communication like newspapers and radio and television, those are sort of one-way communications. You say what you want to say, and people can't respond back to you. So they either like what you say or they don't. They form their impression, and that's the end of it. Well, social media is very different because you have multiple touch points. You can communicate with people more frequently, and they have the opportunity to talk back to you. So obviously that can be very scary and intimidating for a lot of organizations, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But you do have this opportunity to win people over, which is really exciting for an organization like many of you that are doing important work on behalf of people around a topic that honestly has a lot of misconceptions and a lot of opportunities for education and winning over hearts and minds. There's also this opportunity to leverage your tribe. One of the best parts about working in a nonprofit is building those groups of people who are your do or die folks, who will volunteer for everything. They will shout your successes to the rooftops. They will forget your missteps. And social media is a wonderful tool for building that tribe and getting them to help you out. And last but not least, monitoring. It can be really difficult with a lot of different types of communications, like billboards, to know if those are effective or not. You can get an estimate for how many impressions or how many eyeballs might see that, but you really don't know if that's converting to what you really want people to do. And in social media, there are so many analytics options that you really can monitor your success much more easily. And that's really why Kristen and I wanted to do a refresher on Facebook and Instagram Insights today, because it just really is so important. So let's dig down a little bit into two of the things I mentioned. And one of those is web referrals. So this is from an organization called Parsley, and they are a corporation that manages over 2,500 online media outlets, so online newspapers and magazines and forums. So slightly different than your world, obviously, but they do a very great job of tracking where their referrals come from across all of those agencies. And this is very current data, so this is for the last 12 months as of yesterday when I pulled this chart. And they are showing that 48% of all of their web traffic comes from Google search, 28% comes from Facebook, and 2.5% comes from Twitter. Now, this may be very different for your organization, but I think it is an undeniable fact that social media is a huge driver of web traffic, and it's definitely something that a senior executive should consider at least putting on the menu if one of your big goals is to drive traffic to your website. So the next thing I want to show you, so CPM is an advertising metric that essentially measures how much you have to spend to reach 1,000 people with your advertisement. And you can see that a direct mail, so a mailed invitation to an event or a mailed flyer or brochure, costs about $57 to reach 1,000 people. Whereas in contrast, social media costs about $2.50. So now you have to think that are these meaningful, people to you? Perhaps, perhaps not. With something like a billboard, while you get a lot of eyeballs on a billboard, it doesn't necessarily mean that those are the people that you want. They may not be meaningful. So another measure that we use in advertising is CPC, which stands for cost per click. So if you had an advertisement, it would be how many people were clicking on that to take some sort of action, whether that was to get more information, to, participate in a contest, to sign up for an email list, to go to your website. This is measuring how much it costs per click. So you can see that social media is relatively very, very inexpensive. So about 50 cents for a Facebook cost per click, higher on Instagram, slightly higher on Twitter, and quite expensive on LinkedIn. Although I will say that LinkedIn obviously caters to a professional audience, which are often more challenging to reach. And so you expect as a marketer to pay a little bit more to reach professionals than you might to reach the general public. So those are some sort of just broad strokes, sort of things to think about when you're trying to sell social media to your management. So the next thing that I would talk about is to make the point that your audience is on social media. Without a doubt, they are. Unless, you're in a super, super niche market and they've told you that none of them are on social media. I have a very good feeling that the majority of your folks are on social media. So these two reports, these are linked, and we will be sending out the slides. So go and check those out. The first is the Pew Research Center Social Media Use in 2019, and then the Statista Social Media Use in the U.S. Both of these are really great sites that give you detailed information about users. And the second one that I think is very impressive to managers is Facebook Audience Insights. So I want to show you this very, very quickly. You're going to go to facebook.com/ads/audience-insights. And again, this is hyperlinked in your slide set. You must have a Facebook business page to have access to this information, but you do not have to be buying ads to look at this information. So let's quickly go see. Okay, so when you go to facebook.com/ads/audience-insights, the first thing you're going to do is they're going to ask you to choose an audience. And you have two options. One is people connected to your page. So that's going to show you very detailed information about the people who like and follow your page. So if you're running a page, right after this webinar, I want you to go to facebook.com/ad/audience insights and go check out who is connected to your page already. But if I'm making an argument to an executive, I'm going to go to this everyone on Facebook at the top, okay? So this is giving me data right now for everyone in the Facebook universe. And while that's really interesting when you look at the scale, I'm really curious about a specific area, my specific area that I'm trying to make a case for. So I'm going to go to this left-hand side and drill down a little bit. And I'm just going to pick Winston-Salem as an example. And now what this is doing is showing me data that Facebook is intaking from Winston-Salem. Now, as you can see, this is saying that there are about 200 to 250 people using Facebook in Winston-Salem. And I did look it up in this morning, and there are 260,000 people per the 2017 census in Winston-Salem. So there's definitely a margin of error here for Facebook. Lots of factors go into how they pull in their data, including whether the user enables their location. So there is a margin of error, but still, I think any executive can see that if you have a population of 260,000 and 200,000 of them are on a social media platform, that's a pretty darn good deal. So you can spend some time here and learn lots of neat things. You can learn how many people in your area are married, single, in a relationship, their education level, which should help you when you're thinking about how sort of the level that you should be writing your content to. You can see their popular job titles and what industries are important to them. If we go up here to page likes, you can actually see some of the most popular social media categories and pages that people in your community like. So I'm sure that many of you are probably followers of some of these pages. I definitely want to go to the Porch Kitchen and Cantina because, man, it's right up there with the schools and the government. But you can also use this information to think strategically about who you should call and say, hey, would you work with us to share posts and comment on our posts? Because clearly there's lots and lots of people engaging with these communities or these pages in your community. And the other thing I would look at is this last one called activity, where you can see device types. So mobile, 68% of people are accessing Facebook purely on mobile. About 30% are doing both, and most of those folks are your working 9-to-5 types who have a desk job where they're looking at Facebook occasionally, and then at night they're using their mobile phone. And then 3%, and typically this skews to older adults, are desktop-only users. So again, interesting information for your executive, also interesting for you as a content creator. All righty. So make that case that it's something to consider to reach more people. Next thing I would consider doing is show some case studies of similar organizations that are successfully using social media. So I put two examples here. One is Operation Unite, and they are a Kentucky anti-drug coalition, and they are actually the first coalition that Kristen and I ever trained on social media. And gold star to them because in a very short amount of time, they have just built a phenomenal, active, successful, engaging page. And they're doing some really neat things, and they're driving traffic to their treatment programs, they're educating their community, they're selling tickets to their conference. Really, really great use case. And the second, I would suggest looking at the Addiction Professional Referral Facebook group. So this is one of, if not the largest professional Facebook group for addiction professionals. And this will sort of give you a different use case. So this is a Facebook group, so it is closed. Not everyone can look at it, but it really does have some great conversations for people in the industry. Then the last thing I would do is I would call a meeting and present a preliminary plan. You can't just go in and say, we should use social media without really laying out how you would actually do this. So you want to outline your goals and audiences and the types of content you might share and how you would staff it and how you would evaluate it. And put yourself in their shoes and predict, because I bet many of you know your bosses well, predict the questions they're going to ask you. And a lot of them that we've heard a lot are, our audience is not online, which I think we've hopefully built our case that that's not probably true. What if someone writes something awful? So we're going to talk about that next. That is probably one of the biggest fears that executives have, of this is going to somehow impact us negatively. And then the third is too time consuming. And I think the best way to combat that is really to talk about that return on investment that I mentioned earlier. And if you do all of that and they're still not buying it, I would say your Hail Mary here is to offer to start small. So maybe say, okay, listen, would you please let me just start one social media page or one Facebook group and run a very small campaign? Let me have $50 to prove that this works and measure your success. Or let me use Facebook events for one planned fundraiser. And I will tell you, Kristen and I's organization, ORAU, has a pretty good social media presence, but we have had to use this tactic to push them towards more innovation. So we were at a conference about a year ago, and Kristen spent her own money, like I forgot, Kristen, like $15 or $20 to do a Snapchat geo-filter for a conference that we then took back and said, hey, you all really need to be thinking of some of these more innovative tactics. And it worked. So, all righty. So the next thing thank you to whoever sent this question, because it's a great one. And that is, could use of social media negatively impact our agency's reputation? And how do we respond to negative social media engagement? Do we engage? Do we ignore? Do we delete? So thank you to whoever sent that question, because it's a great one. So the short answer is yes. I would be lying to you if I said that there was no possibility that social media could not negatively impact your organization. And I think that there's 4 ways in which it is most likely that something bad could happen. And these 4 scenarios are as follows. The one, and I think probably the most likely, is that an employee negatively represents or misrepresents your organization on their personal page. So someone says something nasty about you or about your organization or in general, and it impacts your representation, and you didn't even know about it because it was on their personal page. Number 2, that you make a mistake. We're all human. Social media managers are quite human and quite busy. You make a mistake, and once it's posted, it's harder to correct than obviously before it was posted. Number 3, and I think this is probably the most common, is negative, misleading, or hateful social media comments. And the 4th is negative customer reviews. So we're going to talk about ways to combat all of those because I really do think that you can minimize your risk very, very, very much by doing a few things. And I think once you've minimized the risk enough, it becomes acceptable. Obviously, mistakes are going to happen, but they're not going to be something that your organization can't handle. So your best friends in terms of addressing potential mitigating risks associated with social media are an employee social media policy and a social media strategy for your organization that includes page rules or a comment policy. So we're going to talk about each one of those right now. So what is an employee social media policy? It is guidance for an employee's personal use of social media, particularly as it relates to talking about your organization or interacting with your clients, partners, or donors. So a lot of people have a misconception that an employee social media policy is just basically telling people how much they can or cannot be on Facebook at work. Sure, if you want to include that in your social media policy, that's fine. Especially if you bought the computers, you can tell people they can't use work computers to be on social media, but I guarantee you they're going to be on it on their cell phones. So in terms of mitigating risk, you really need to think more strategically about, your employees are going to use social media. How can you make sure that they are being respectful to your organization? You obviously cannot, tell them they can't have freedom of speech, but you can put forth some guidelines to help mitigate the risk to your organization. So what are some things that you should consider? The first is I really recommend that when you're developing your policy, you involve a diverse group of stakeholders. So you definitely want to have your staff because they're going to be impacted and they sort of have the best lens for how they might react to this policy. You want to include your legal, your human resources, your public relations, and your privacy and security. And I recognize that some of your organizations are small and you don't have all of these departments, and that's okay. You probably have someone that maybe a board member who has some legal expertise, or you have someone in your staff who's at least thought about some of these issues before. Definitely just try and get some diverse perspectives. I highly recommend that you expand your policy to include other online activities besides just social media. So obviously, we instantly think about Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, but you have to remember that people are present online in many different ways. So blogs, forums, and probably most potentially harmful are online comments in response to news stories. So those comment boxes on CNN can get heated very quickly. So that is something that I strongly recommend you put in your social media policy. I also think that you need to clearly note what should and should not be shared on social media. So obviously, business sensitive information or trade secrets, gossip, rumors, and personal identifying information or public personal health information, anything regulated by HIPAA, you need to make sure that your employees know without any doubt that they cannot post that information because there could be legal repercussions. I also recommend that employees contact your social media manager with questions, post requests, or any problems. If they make a mistake, you don't want them to hide it. You want to create an environment in which if they've said something somewhere and people have reacted negatively and connected it to your organization, you want to know about it soon so that you can do some mitigation. So I want you to encourage your employees to like, comment, and share your company posts. Having employee engagement with your organization is essential. It's such an important part of a successful social media strategy. So you don't want to scare people and think that they can't be connected to your organization. Something that I would consider is requesting that when they are expressing opinions about your organization specifically or about topics related to your organization or programs related to your organization, that they do two things. One, they disclose their employee status and that they include the phrase, the legalese, these opinions are my own, they do not reflect my organization. Now, a lot of people may question why I suggest that they disclose their employee status. Obviously, if they're giving a personal political opinion or something like that, I don't think that's necessary. But if they are talking about something related to your organization or related to your topic area, such as substance abuse, it is likely that someone will connect them to your organization. And so far better, in my opinion, to disclose that up front so that it's not a secret, it's out in the air. And then you couch it and sort of protect yourself by including that these opinions are my own. I also recommend that you advise against friending current clients or minors. So most healthcare organizations, most schools and education groups have a very firm policy that says you do not connect with your clients on social media. And that's really for their protection and for yours. Now, I know that many of you are running groups in schools or after school programs for youth. And, social media is a part of your program. So you need a way to connect online with your kids. So in those cases, I highly recommend that you create a business page or a group that's connected to your organizational page instead. So that way you can use that business page to interact as freely as you would like, but it protects your personal page and it protects, all of your own opinions that you may share that you may not want your youth to know about. Last thing, I highly recommend that you release your social media policy to employees via a webinar or an in-person meeting. So this should not be something that you just throw to them and say, hey, read this, it's our new social media policy, which is what 90% of organizations do. And the reason for that is we know we have data that shows people do not read. And this is important. Your reputation is at stake. So really consider doing a training or at least a webinar or an in-person meeting when you roll this out. And maybe include some case studies to emphasize why this is so important, and also ask for some questions. So, all right, so let's go. Okay, so I know during the training, several of you asked for some example social media policies, and I've included 5 here that I think are excellent, that are highly relevant to you all and the work that you do. So check these out. We will be sending out the slides, and these are all live links. So go and check those out. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is a social media strategy. So this is different from a policy in that this really is more of a functional document, an operational document that outlines your processes and procedures for managing your organization and business social media channels. So this is most relevant to a smaller group of staff who are going to be actively involved in creating content, posting content, reviewing content. So what are some of the things in a social media strategy? You've heard Kristen and I talk about this until we're blue in the face. You want to have all of these different things. And at the bottom here, I've included a link to our social media strategy template. Go check that out. And that really is sort of a fill-in-the-blank tool for you to help develop a written social media strategy. And you've heard Kristen say this a bunch. We really hope that you'll develop a written social media strategy so that when the person that runs your social media leaves, you don't stop using social media forever, that it really does have some continuity of operations. But for today, because we're talking about mitigating those negative risks, there's 2 parts of this strategy that I really want to talk to you about, and that is responding to negative comments and a page comment policy. So when you're developing your social media strategy, I want you to very clearly outline a process that you're going to use for content creation. Who's going to make drafts? Who's going to review? And who's going to post? So you really do not want to have one person doing all of those things, because the person who creates should not edit themselves. That's just going to have more errors. You're going to have spelling errors. You're going to have typos. You might make mistakes in terms of posting things that your organization doesn't agree with. So at a minimum, try and have 2 people involved in the content creation and review. I highly recommend that you make sure that you are up to date on current affairs to avoid offending everyone. So I gave the NRA example in the training. This was the NRA had scheduled a very innocuous post that said, "Happy Friday, shooters." They had forgotten that they had scheduled it, and it came out the day after the Aurora, Colorado shooting. So obviously a public relations nightmare for them because the NRA, quite frankly, seemed heartless in that scenario. Another example is Adidas. About 2 years ago, Adidas put a post out that said, after the Boston Marathon, that said, "Congratulations for surviving the Boston Marathon." And this was obviously several years after the Boston Marathon bombing, but for people in that community, that is still very raw and very sensitive. And that post really came off as, again, heartless for Adidas. Another thing, remain apolitical. I understand that if you're in the advocacy field, this may actually be core to your mission, so that's an exception. But in general, organizations are best served by remaining apolitical, particularly if you're getting grant funding. For our field specifically, you want to avoid that stigmatizing language. We, as people in the substance abuse field, have a responsibility to correct a lot of that stigma and those myths. So that includes person first language. So an individual with opioid use disorder, for example, instead of terms like a junkie or an addict. We know that those terms do great harm to people. Other things to consider: do not tag employees or partners without their permission. Pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I would like to do this post and I would like to tag you. Is that okay?" Unless you're co-doing an event and sort of it's implied, it's very nice to do that double check. And 9 times out of 10, particularly donors, are going to be thrilled that you want to acknowledge them and much more likely to like and share and comment on your post. But 1 in 10, for whatever reason, may not want to be acknowledged, and you've sort of increased your reputation with them by asking for that permission. Use a consistent and appropriate tone. Respond to comments professionally and courteously, and avoid getting into arguments. It can be hard, particularly when people are just being jerks. It can be so tempting to want to be a jerk back. But just like we have to do as parents with our kids, put on your mom hat, put on your dad hat, and be the bigger person, because it could harm your organization. And also be human. If you make a mistake, people will point it out. So I have made tons of spelling errors on social media before, and I have never had a case where it hasn't been pointed out. The best strategy there is just to acknowledge you messed up and be cheeky about it. So I will say things like, "Whoops, clearly I forgot my cup of coffee this morning. Thanks for pointing it out." And then you go and edit your post and be on your way. If you don't make a big deal about it, other people won't make a big deal about it. Another really important thing for any page or group is to develop community guidelines or a comment policy. Clearly describe the content that will and will not be tolerated on your page. So racism, homophobia, hate speech. Make it really clear that you are going to delete that content right off the bat. Describe when a warning will be blocked or the circumstances for removing or blocking a user. And here's a couple examples of some really great community guidelines for you to use. And the last thing I will say on this is to come together as an organization or as multiple organizations, even better. So those of you on the phone, if you could do this offline, it would be amazing. List some scenarios that you anticipate happening. So in the training, we heard one about Any post about vaping gets an onslaught of really bad comments. So talk through that about what sorts of things you might encounter and how your organization is going to respond. And the most common things that you may encounter are misinformation, stigmatizing comments, and backlash regarding certain topics. Now, my last thing I want to say in the question was, should we delete? Should we ignore? What should we do? This is just my professional opinion. I'm sure others may disagree, but I do not recommend deleting annoying, judgmental, or erroneous posts. It would be great if we could delete all the annoying people in our lives, but we can't. So for me, it's very cut and dry. If it's hate speech, if it's racist, if it's homophobic, I go ahead and delete that. It's in my policy and it's cut and dry. I'm not going to face any backlash for that. But if it's just annoying or inaccurate, I'm going to let that go and I'm going to respond in a different way. And the reason for that is because you do not want people to be accusing your organization of censorship, for one. Because people will climb back on and say, why are you deleting my comments? What are you trying to hide? Also, conversation, whether good or bad, is great for your engagement. And engagement really is the path to success on social media. So we do kind of need to shift our thinking a little bit that not all, negativity is bad. Engagement is good. Some tactics I've used, one of my absolute favorites, if someone just says something totally off the wall or inaccurate, thank you for the opportunity to clear up a common misconception. You don't want people to feel bad that they've made a mistake. So by saying, this is something that a lot of people think, sort of makes them feel a little bit better and will hopefully kind of cushion the blow a little bit. Sometimes if it's just incessant, ignore it. And a good example, check out CDC's page. CDC has a rabid following of anti-vaccine people on there, and they ignore most of it. They let their commenters police themselves, and they do. I mean, commenters are commenting with each other, and CDC just stays out of it, and their reputation is protected. If someone is just incessant and it's starting to become a problem, if you can, try to take them out of your comment box and into direct messenger. So either send them a comment back that says, hi, we really appreciate this feedback. It sounds like you have a really strong opposition to what we're doing. Will you please send us an email and we'd like to have a conversation with you? Or send them a direct message and very calmly get them off of your Facebook post. You're going to want to decide as a social media team whether you're going to respond to each individual post versus an entire group, and decide whether or not to activate reviews. If you think that there is a big threat to activating reviews, I say just turn it off. You can delete negative reviews on Facebook. It's not like TripAdvisor and whatever the food one is where they never go away. But it can look really shady if you're deleting reviews. So I highly recommend that if it becomes a problem, just inactivate reviews. People can't leave reviews for you anymore. And this is just an example of a public health department that did a group response to some inaccuracies about vaping. And I went way over time, so I'm not going to read this, but you can go back in the slides and read it. Last thing I'll say on this topic, how not to be surprised. Monitor your posts and comments daily. Put 5 minutes on your calendar to check your page and make sure nothing crazy is going on. And also, if you can, use a social listening tool to search your organization name, your hashtags, any hashtags that you may use regularly, to make sure that no one is saying anything awful that you're not aware of. And the Hootsuite is the one that Kristen and I love best. So I am sorry, Kristen, I went over time, but I'm going to pass it to you for the remaining 2 questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. And nobody has ever accused us of not being able to fill our time on these webinars. So we hope to have some time for questions for you guys. If we don't, of course, you're always welcome to send us emails with your questions after today's webinar. So let me go ahead and hit present. So we had a few additional questions here. One of them was how to promote the use of social media in the non-technology space. So, they wanted to really know how do we encourage people to engage and use social media in those offline moments. So I wanted to take a minute to talk through this. So when you're promoting social media offline, there's some internal promotion and then there's external promotion. So I wanted to talk about each one individually. So when it comes to internal promotion, I think one thing that's really important to encourage people to use social media is having leadership within your organization do that encouraging. So this is really great if you went in through and did everything Jennifer recommended in terms of how to gain leadership buy-in for social media. So if they're on board, having them do that encouragement really helps. And I will give you an example of something that our organization did recently that I thought worked really well and was really effective. So our new director of business development decided to create a video that was shared during an employee town hall. And she, in that video, was talking about how all of our employees can use social media to help, promote the work that we're doing, to increase the reach of our content. So she really encouraged that engagement, and she gave some specific calls to action, one of which was when we're posting about our organization and things that we're doing on in our organization is to use our organization hashtag, which in our case is #FurtherTogether. So she really encouraged that as one way in which we can, I'm sorry, I'm seeing that my GoToMeetings thing is in your way. So let me make sure that you guys don't see that. There we go, sorry. So she really did a great job of encouraging us to use social media and to use that #FurtherTogether, but she also recommended that we tag ORAU, our organization, in our posts. So recently, Jennifer and I had the pleasure of being interviewed by a local Knoxville radio host about some research that we did when it comes to opioid communication best practices in Appalachia. So we were on that radio segment, and that was posted online, and Jennifer and I were tagged by our organization. They posted about it, but also I went on my own personal LinkedIn profile and I shared that content to my followers with that #FurtherTogether, and I tagged my organization ORAU. So I thought that video that our director of BD did was really well done and really just made the case of why it's important for all of our employees to engage in sharing our content to really increase the reach. The next thing that I really want to encourage you all to do is make sure those employees are aware of those social media do's and don'ts. Jennifer, I thought, did a really great job of explaining some of those things that you need to consider when you're creating that list of do's and don'ts. And I love her suggestion to make sure that you're not just sending that out via email. That's not going to be effective. You really need to do it in a more engaging way. So, maybe you do sort of those two things together in a video that comes from your top leadership. So encouraging social media use, but also letting people know what is and is not acceptable. A third thing that I thought was that could be a really good strategy for you all to promote the use of social media offline is to make sure that social media is actually a regular agenda item in recurring meetings. So I would encourage you all to, as part of that agenda item, talk through what's been going on your social media channels. It's a great time to review those metrics and to bring those to the meeting to say, hey, last month or last quarter, depending on how often you guys meet, we had X number of social media posts and we reached X number of people, and then talk through what are some opportunities in the upcoming month or upcoming quarter for us to promote the work that we're doing on social media. So I think having those conversations with larger board meetings or organizational meetings and getting everyone involved in the discussion of social media is going to just lend itself naturally to having more employees participate on their own. Next, I'd love to talk about external promotion. So this is you telling everyone else other than your employees how to find you on social media, encouraging them to engage with you. So you want to make sure that you put your social media usernames everywhere. So this includes on your website. If you get an email from Jennifer or I, you will see that in our email signatures, and this is a standard requirement in our organization, we have standardized signatures that have links to our organization's Facebook page, Twitter account, and LinkedIn. And I think Instagram too now, but put those in your email signatures. Make sure they're on your business cards, your conference signage, anywhere you can put those social media usernames, please do. And then I will show you, I say use name tags. So this is a feature that's built into Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. It's also right now in Facebook Messenger. However, that feature is being phased out. So I did not include it in here, and I will talk about those more in a minute. But I wanted to show you just a few examples of some of this external promotion. So this is a little promotional card that I developed for one of my clients, the CDC's School Health Branch, and they have a tool called the School Health Index. So they go to conferences all the time, and they really wanted to have these little giveaway cards that they could pass out at conferences to educate people about this tool. So as you can see in it, it might be a little bit small on your screen, but I apologize. On the back of this card, we have, the Facebook and Twitter icons, because those are the channels that School Health Branch is most active on. Now, this is a really interesting technique because School Health Branch does not have their own CDC CDC social media accounts. So they use the general @CDC.gov Facebook and Twitter accounts to post and share their content. So as you can imagine, just like if you were a health department, CDC has a ton of topic areas that they communicate about on a regular basis. Well, school health is just one of those topic areas, and this can kind of sometimes get lost in all of the other things that they're communicating about, hedgehogs and salmonella being one of those most recent things. But one technique that they use is instead of giving the username for the Facebook and Twitter accounts that they post on, they provide and promote their individual School Health Branch hashtag, which happens to be #CDC Healthy Schools. So they encourage people to follow their content by searching for that hashtag. And if you do that, all of their specific content will come up on those channels. So that's a really great strategy if you are in the same boat as CDC, where you have a lot of different topic areas that you are promoting through one single social media channel. You might want to consider individual hashtags for your various programs. And then when you're developing content, for offline use, such as these promo cards or fact sheets, you can put those individual hashtags on that content. So I thought this was a really good strategy, and I really wanted to share it with you guys because I think some of you have mentioned to us that you are in that boat, or if you did start social media channels, you would be in that boat because of how much you have to educate people about. So I mentioned name tags, the use of name tags. Now, name tags are essentially a QR code, and I would recommend that if you have Instagram, if you have Twitter, if you have Snapchat, because these are the channels that name tags are available on, I would really recommend that you go in here and download your name tag. Like I said, it's a QR code, which means that people will be able to use their mobile device and scan that QR code with their camera, and it'll automatically bring up your account. And then it's very simple for them to be able to follow you on that platform. So I wanted to include the directions here today for how to download your name tag on Instagram. So it's pretty simple, and you can just save it right to your camera roll, which is really exciting. And so once you save it, I wanted to show you what those name tags look like. And the Twitter one, I think, looks most like what you would normally see as a regular QR code. That's the one in the middle there. The one on the left is the one from Instagram, and the one on the right is from Snapchat. So if you were to open up your Instagram camera, your camera on Twitter, or your camera on Snapchat and scan those QR codes, my accounts for Ace and Darla, my personal Twitter account and my personal Snapchat account, would come right up, and you would be able to hit, follow or add friend. So this is what I recommend to people. Go ahead and download these name tags and print them on everything. So this is just an alternative to putting your username on things or your hashtag, because it allows sort of people it's an easier way for them to go ahead and follow you. Less steps. Less steps equals more likely that people will actually take the action. All right, so I am gonna head over to my next slide, which is about how to use online polling and voting processes to drive engagement. So this is a really fun one. I like polls, and I think, in general, people like polls because people love giving their opinion. I personally do. I told Jennifer all the time, if I could just make a living giving my opinion to people, that would be great. So really we use polls in social media for two reasons. Engagement, because polls actually boost engagement, creates more reach for your content, means more eyeballs will see your content. And you can also use polls for research and learning more about your audience. So this is really cool. I love when brands do that. So there are a couple different things I want to talk about with polls. There's the built-in polling features within these platforms. And then there are polls that people do where they don't use these built-in polling features. So currently, Facebook pages and groups have built-in polling features. They recently got rid of the poll option in personal profiles, which I was really bummed about the other day when I was trying to poll all of my friends about whether or not I should get rid of the desk in our kitchen. We're looking at remodeling our kitchen, so found that out the hard way. On Instagram, you can do polls in stories. There is not a built-in polling feature in Feed or IGTV. There's also built-in polling features on Twitter and YouTube. So my pictures here just show you a couple examples of those built-in polling features on various platforms. I really liked this one from Torrington Awareness and Prevention Partnership. Their poll asked, do you think that underage drinking is a problem in Torrington? So this is a really great way to show you how people are using polls to do audience research. So, they're trying to understand their awareness. The one here, the pink one, it says, when it comes to podcasts, what do you get into more? Guest interviews or solo episodes? This is a really great way to learn more about your audience too, because they're going to respond to this poll, and then you're going to know what type of content you need to be creating that is going to best engage your audience. This third example here, I thought this one was really cute. This is a really cute one from Dunkin' Donuts. It says, in honor of National Coffee Day, tell us how much you love coffee. And then they had, as their poll options, they used coffee mugs. So the last one won out because apparently people love coffee. 4 coffee mugs got 79%, as opposed to 1 coffee mug, which only got 7%. So no surprise, people who are following Dunkin' Donuts love coffee. But an example of how you can just sort of use polls in a fun way to drive engagement and help increase the reach of future posts and future content. Wanted to give you some examples of some non-built-in polls. So this is, again, not using the polling features that are built into the platforms. I really recommend using the polling features. Anytime you can use special features in a platform, it's just really going to help increase your reach and engagement over doing it the other way. Like I said, when you can make it easier for people to do things, it's going to increase the likelihood that they will do it. So having a one-click answer option by the use of regular polls is just going to increase your engagement by nature. But I did want to show you just a couple things. I thought, we're just 2 different strategies for if you didn't want to use that polling option. Here are some ways that people have, or if you're using a platform that doesn't have that built-in polling feature, such as Instagram feed, here are some ways where you can get around that. So this one on the left from Instagram, this is an example. And if you were in our in-person training last year, I used this as an example of engagement strategies, because I think this is just so darn cute. So the caption reads, there are 2 types of people in this world. 1, a person who notices in 1 second that my quilt is not straight. Or 2, someone wouldn't notice and still maybe like, So she asks for my number 1ers out there, which totally me. I saw that right away. It bugs me. I just want to fix it really bad. So she said, for my number 1ers out there, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to straighten it? And then she says, I'm at an 11. So this is sort of a poll. So people would respond with numbers between 1 and 10. And I'm sure some people are going to be like me and put like 10,000 on here. But this is a cute way that I thought someone used Instagram feed to poll people, even though it did not have a built-in polling feature. The one on the right, I do want to give a little bit of a caveat to this. So I'll explain it and then I'll give my proceed with caution caveat. So this is actually a photo that this brand List Reports posted on Facebook in one of their posts. And the photo, so this is a graphic that they created probably via Canva or something like that. You could easily do it through Canva. It said, if you could only have one of the following in your dream home, which would it be? So they're encouraging you, if you had to pick one of these things to be in your home, which one would you pick? And if your answer is, for example, the home theater, you would respond by reacting to that post with the heart reaction. If you picked Dwayne The Rock Johnson, you would react to that post using the wow. I will caution you that in the past, we've seen posts where people have actually used the graphic to ask people to like and comment and share their content. This may and sometimes can be picked up by the Facebook algorithm as something we call engagement bait. Engagement bait can be dinged in the algorithm, and it might impact the reach of your content. So I just want to say, for these type of posts, please proceed with caution. I haven't seen anything, testing whether or not these reaction bait posts are the same as the ones that ask people specifically to like, comment, and share. So just proceed with caution. And again, Facebook has that built-in polling option, so I would use it. Don't create something that's going to take you a lot more time to do. Okay, so we want to take a second and let everyone who's on the line ask questions. Jennifer and I do have 20 minutes that we have planned to do a couple short demos of Facebook Insights and Instagram Insights, but we wanted to pause and see if you guys have any questions about the content that we've shared, because this is in response to the questions that you guys asked. And if we don't get to the demos because you have lots of questions, we do have a webinar that we did last year on Facebook analytics that goes in a lot more depth than what we were going to do today. It is slightly outdated because there's been some changes to the platforms, but that is something that we can send. We really wanted this to be a TA style webinar where we could answer your questions and make sure that you feel comfortable going out and using social media. So go ahead if you have any questions at this point and put them in the question box, and Alex will copy those over to Jennifer and I so that we can respond to those. So we'll give you a second to type in any questions that you might have. And if there are no questions or we answer them all in time, we'll move right along to the Insights demo. Okay, it doesn't look like we've had any questions so far, but again, please feel free to ask your questions. And again, you feel free to email us after the fact. Since we only have a little bit over 15 minutes, I think it makes sense for us to prioritize either Facebook or Instagram. That way we give you more of an in-depth look into at least one of these platforms. Like I said, we have that full webinar on analytics that we can send out. So if you guys wouldn't mind, we'd like to poll the audience at this point. So you have one option. If you can enter it into the question box. Do you want to see a tour of Facebook Insights or Instagram Insights? So pick one or the other, type it into the question box, and then Alex will tell us what the overwhelming majority think.
And if you have a question, since you're already in the question box,
yep, now's your time. Jennifer and I are here. All right, so use that question box. Make sure you're typing in Facebook or Instagram. I'll give you one more minute to do so.
We realize some of you may be just dialing in on your phone.
Okay, and Jennifer, can you see what Alex, what the verdict is here? My mouse is not working to be able to look at that chat box.
I can. So it looks like at 2:15 she said it's even, and then a second later Facebook. So Alex, can you confirm the people want Facebook?
All right. Well, Alex, if you can make Jennifer a presenter, Jennifer can do a little walkthrough of Facebook, and then we will make sure to send out that link to the analytics webinar where you can watch Instagram.
All righty. Am I having a bad echo? You all hear an echo, or am I okay?
You're okay to me.
Excellent. All righty. So let's talk about Facebook Insights, because this really is such an important part of how you should be using social media strategy, is to check whether or not it's working. So if you have a business page, if you have set that up for Facebook, you should have this lovely little bar up at the top. Okay, if you do not have that, then you do not have a business page, or you do not have administrator rights. So you need to ask whoever started the page for you to give you that access. So today we're going to talk about Facebook Insights, which is right here. So you're going to go straight to your business page and then click on that Insights. And I'm just going to show you, I know all of you are pressed for time. So I'm going to talk today about the places that I go most often, because quite frankly, there's a huge list on the left, and I do not regularly use half of those. So this overview page is going to pop up first. And when I am managing a page, this is the place that I will go regularly, several times a week, just to get a feel for how my page is doing. So when I'm looking at this summary here of page likes and post reach and things like that, I am mostly just skimming this to make sure that there is not anything crazy happening. So for example, on post reach, if I see a huge spike, that's something that I want to dig into. You know, that means if I see a huge spike that I have found a unicorn, you know, I found a piece of content that people really love, and I want to dig into that a little bit more. Or on the, flip side, if I see a huge decrease, I need to see why that happened. And then at the bottom of this page here, you're going to get to see your 5 most recent posts, which again, if you're checking this routinely, is going to be great. And what is it going to tell you? It's going to tell you the type of content, whether it's a photo, video, link post. It's going to give you the reach, which, as a reminder, what is reach? That is the number of people who saw your post in their newsfeed. So reach does not necessarily equal your number of followers. If you are doing paid, it's going to show you the number reached organically, which means just unpaid. You hit post and the number of people who it got into their newsfeed, versus paid, which is how many Facebook provided for what you spent to either boost or advertise. Engagement is going to be your post clicks. So what is a post click? A post click is can be lots of things. So it can be that see more, which expands the post in mobile. It can be a click to expand a photo. It can be a click to go to a link or to watch a video. All of those are considered post clicks, and it's a measure of engagement with your content, or reactions, comments, and shares. Okay, so now another thing that I'm going to look at is at the bottom of that overview page, Facebook lets you add, I believe it's about 5 or 6 pages to watch. Now, this is a really great thing to do. What I would do for all of you is add 5 or 6 other substance abuse related pages. So I want you to maybe consider adding, SAMHSA or CDC, other drug coalitions, maybe your North Carolina group or your group of TA group. And look at this occasionally. And if you see huge spikes in engagement, somebody has posted their engagements are in the thousands or they're up, by 50% or something, you really want to look into what they posted that was so popular so that you can steal it or borrow it, as we say in the field. So that's the overview tab. Another important thing that I want to show you is right here, and it's this export data tab. So you should be monitoring your Facebook Insights on a regular basis, but I also want you to think about looking across your social media on a quarterly basis. So what this is going to do is provide you a spreadsheet of 180 days worth of posts or up to 500 posts at a time. So if you are one of those crazy organizations that posts multiple times a day, it's 180 days or up to 500 posts. And it's going to give you 3 options. Oops. I don't know what that was about. But the one that I highly recommend for you all is to go to this second one, which is post data. That's really going to give you all of the information about your content, and that really is what is most important. You can pick your file format. Excel is definitely the most easy to use. The CSV file is what a lot of the third-party tools like Hootsuite or Sprout Social will use to analyze data. So they may request certain file types, but Excel is by far the most user-friendly. You can set your date range. So, I'm going to go back, let's say, to April. And then you can decide sort of what you want to see. And I want to see all my data, not just reach and engagement. And you pick export, and there you go. You've got a beautiful Excel file that has all of your post data. And I'm not going to show you that today for time reasons, but it's there when you want to look at it. So a couple other places that I don't go very often: followers, likes, page views, and page previews. So you can get likes and followers from your home page, and unless you're running a campaign to get more followers, that's not really something that you need to concern yourself with on a regular basis. Same thing with page views and page previews. Most people are not going to your page to see your content. They are getting your content delivered to them in their news feed. So not a huge amount of useful information. Where I do think that you get lots of great information is right here under posts. So what is some of the stuff on this tab that I particularly like? Number one of the biggest questions we get is, when should I post? Well, my second question is, when are your fans online? And this is where you can learn that information. So here is this lovely graph that shows when all of the ORAU fans are online, and it's pretty consistent. They are, checking it routinely every day, but there is definitely a spike in our users around 6 o'clock, which makes sense. Most people are getting off work and they're skimming their social media. And so if I were a content creator, I would be looking to post around 4 or 5 o'clock so that I am in people's news feed around 6 o'clock. There's built some traction. Some people are liking and commenting already before the majority of my fans are online. So some other nice things, post types. The second most common question we get is, what should I be posting? Well, the answer to that question for ORAU, and newsflash for almost all other organizations, is video. Video outperforms every kind of content, and that's certainly true for ORAU. Links and photos are second and third, and then shared video, which is when we share our partners' videos, is actually performing really poorly for us. So that is something that in our content strategy meetings, we need to talk about and reconsider doing that because it's not working very well for us. And then top posts from pages you watch. Again, this is looking at what is performing well for my friends or my competitors and what tactics could I steal. So again, on posts, this is just like what we saw in overview, but it is for all my posts. So if you really are a visual person, you don't like the Excel format, and you want to see, how your posts are performing, spend some time with this chart. And you can see on this post, for example, you get a whole ton of data in terms of how people are interacting, who's interacting. A lot of people ask about negative feedback. Do I need to worry if people hide or unlike my post or unlike my page? My response is, do not worry too much about that. If it's 1 or 2 or even 3 or 4, not a big deal. People are fickle. People are going to like or unlike and hide you. But if it's a huge spike in people, then you probably do want to look at that and say, what did I post that offended so many people? And maybe I shouldn't do that again. And as you can see here in this reach column, the light yellow is organic, and the darker orange is what we accomplished by boosting the post or paying for it. So when you do that, you can view more details about exactly what you got for that payment, and you would do that by clicking on the view promotion. I don't have access to that because I didn't purchase those ads, but you do have access. And as you can see, for the naysayers who wonder, does boosting posts work, just based on ORAU, you can see that we never spend more than $50 to $100 ever. We really do get a good bang for our buck. I know we only have 2 more minutes, so I do want to show you one more place that is useful to look at quasi-regularly, and that is this People tab. So like Facebook Audience Insights that I showed you earlier, this is going to give you some great information about your fans. So as you can see, ORAU, we skew heavily towards women, but don't just look at your fans, because that is the people who have, liked or followed your post. But look at this. Who am I reaching with my post? So remember, you are reaching people who want to see your content, so the people who have engaged with your content. So you can see that while my fans are largely in that 35 to 54 range, the people who are actually getting my content and engaging with it are very different. So as a content creator, I really need to sit and think about, I may not be reaching my audience very successfully. I seem to be really doing well with this 18 to 24 year group, which makes sense. We do a lot of promotions for students about college and graduate school opportunities. And for over 65, we have a lot of retirees, so that makes sense. But we need to really take a look at that. So we are right at 2:30, and I want to be respectful of your time. Kristen dropped off and is back with us miraculously. But that is sort of my real quick and dirty. When I'm looking at Facebook Insights, those are the big tabs that I'm going to go. If you want to see more in depth, please go and watch our Facebook Analytics website or our webinar that we did last year, because it's much more in depth, lots of good stuff in there. So I think we'll take one last round of questions if anyone thought of something. Otherwise, Kristen, I think we can wrap up and say thank you. It's really been an honor working with you all. You do such wonderful work, and it's really amazing to get to see what you do. Kristen, are you back on?
Hey, can y'all hear me? I'm so sorry. I'm just having technical difficulties today. But it looks like Alex said there are no new questions. So again, I just want to extend our warmest thanks to all of you guys for hanging in here with us. And again, we'll share some of this stuff that we've mentioned today with Alex to disseminate to all of you all. And then she's got our email addresses if you guys don't, and feel free with any questions at any time. We're happy to help you guys be successful in your social media endeavors. So have a wonderful afternoon, and thanks again.
Bye.